Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connections, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. I'm excited. I have my second threesome on the show today, and I have two recurring guests, Ilse van Goth and Keith Trimels, who have been already prior guests at Back to Basics. Hello, both of you. How you doing?
Good morning.
Very good.
Thank you.
This is exciting, and I enjoy my first threesome so much that I couldn't resist to have two great people coming back on the show. And so I'm going to refresh your minds, those of you that are listening to this, because when we're done, you're going to want to revisit their episodes if you missed them. But Keith, it's episode 34 of Back to Basics, and Ilse is episode 40 of Back to Basics. And as you know, we already doubled that number of episodes. So we chatted a while back. And one of the things that was recurring, I like to say that we become friends, like many other people, never met them in person, but I feel like I've known them for a long time now. And, we were talking about the concept of paying forward. And it seems to be such a relevant subject these days, one that resonates with a lot of people. So we say, let's improvise and have a conversation about it. So here it is. We all have our thoughts. And, the first one, just to get us going here talking, one of the things that I normally, when I chat with my husband, and I've shared this, I think people already are tired of knowing that he's Dutch. So we're very different. We come from very different cultures. And sometimes, and I'm not saying that the Dutch, are very, tight. They're not, but, Latin culture is known for being a little bit more, open and friendly than the Nordic culture. And so in the concept of paying forward, more than once, I've had to justify myself with him in terms of why are you doing that for this person? And he's a great guy. Don't take me wrong. He does plenty good for others. But I find myself justifying why am I doing certain things. I don't think the concept of you do good, and then see what happens is that popular with many people. What do you think, Keith? Do you have any good theories about that?
I think everybody inherently does it, but it's obviously easier with people you know than with people you don't know. And, say in Christian theology, the idea is to help strangers and, people that you don't know. I was reading something just the other day and it was talking about, I honestly, I don't recall who had written it, but I thought it was very poignant, and it's actually, it fits with what you just asked. And that's that our nature as humans is that we track numbers. Okay. Mm-hmm. And for lack of a better word, this wasn't the verbiage that was used, but we keep score. Okay. And so whether it's a game where we keep score or, people's houses measuring by square foot or how many cars or what the cost of their car is or boats or, business and whether we're in the business of creating a business, we're entrepreneurs. So we measure everything by growth and, hey, are we growing 5% this year? Or we measure the growth of our children. Hey, they've grown 2 inches, over the last year. We're wired to do this comparison of numbers and this measurement. And I think somehow that filters in, because we're wired that way, it filters into the idea of if we're going to do something for somebody, where's the measurement? Or have we done 5 things and have we gotten 5 things back or 6 things or 4? Not that one is right or wrong, but our brains are just kind of wired that way. And I think just in sitting back and observing, there seems to be an evolution. And Ilse and I have talked about this outside, and you and I have talked about it, Leticia, and is the idea that over the course of our lives, most business successful business owners that I know, that a lot of them who have helped me in my journey, there's an evolution from maybe in their 20s and 30s where they're trying to succeed and their brain's wired as this measurement way, to as they get towards the backside of their career and they've achieved their goals, to where they've been able to come to a place of subconscious after going through a process of conscious thought, but get to a place of subconscious thought where they can give without thinking about that measurement. And that's when the real power of paying it forward starts to show itself, when you go from, maybe earlier where you're unconscious about it and you're not even thinking about it. And then you realize the power and you start to consciously pay it forward. And then all of a sudden you take this next leap and you realize you're paying it forward without even consciously trying to pay it forward.
Oh, I love that. And I think actually it's great to ask Ilse. I think we all can relate to some aspects of what you said, Keith, about not being aware and then all of a sudden becoming aware. So Ilse, have you experienced something like that?
Yes, absolutely. And I totally agree with Keith. It's true. I experienced that. Last night I was thinking about it. It just came to my mind that for the longest time, years ago, I did things, and now it appears to me that this is actually was paying forward, not knowing that I actually was doing this. And to me, that the enlightenment that this is actually what it was. Right now, I can be much more deliberate in paying forward. But I had so much enjoyment just thinking about the past, how I influenced some of the people I met throughout my life, and as a college professor, as a high school teacher, and also with my family, that I did things which I always thought I just want them to do well. Why can't I just help them to do well? Sometimes that obviously fires back at me. But on the other hand, I think to provide help and to provide time and for people who are very much maybe are not saying it, but they probably would like to have somebody to push them along a little bit. And it's in my nature, actually, as a teacher, so to speak. I look at myself as a teacher throughout my whole life, to want people to do well. And so I get satisfaction out of it, but I can also see that sometimes it actually took hold. And if you allow me, I will give you just a brief example.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you, tell us a story. I want to hear a story.
And this was really something that, wow, did I actually do this? Like in 2015, I walked through the airport in Washington, D.C., getting on my flight, and the lady a beautiful young lady who took my ticket, checked me in, and so on. And all of a sudden she said, "Miss Van Goth, don't you recognize me?" And I looked at her and I said, well, let me think, how should I, why did you think you knew me? And she said, "Miss Van Goth, remember?" And then I was the last one in line. I was in high school in 12th grade, and I had to drop out of school 2 months before summer vacation. Unbeknown to myself, she actually was pregnant at that time. A high school kid was pregnant. And so she had to stay home, and I brought the curriculum to her, and I was sitting with her sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And we also talked. She showed me her room where she had a crib for the baby and all those kind of things. And she was such a young girl. And the whole family lived in poverty. So we got to talk a lot, and I asked her about her dreams and so on. And she was quite a quiet girl and didn't have many friends. So she said, I would like to become a stewardess. I said, "That's a wonderful dream." But she said she couldn't do this. Then throughout the weeks, we talked about more, and I brought in more newspaper clippings and things like this. And all I told her, if that's your goal, you can achieve it as long as you work hard. And here are some of the steps you can take. And so I lost track of her at the beginning of the vacation because I went overseas to do some work overseas. And lo and behold, there she was in front of me, and actually did achieve her goal. And she said, and she gave me a big hug and said, if you hadn't talked to me and encouraged me, I have a 15-year-old son now, and I'm doing good. And to me, I still get choked up about this. To me, it was, when I think about it, it took 15 years actually to see the seeds you planted, that they actually came to fruition. Of course, you never know that, especially as a teacher, you never know this. But that, to me, I said, I just did it because I wanted to do it. But I said to myself last night, I said, this is from now on, and I've done that lately to be more deliberate in my paying forward, because I do support ministries and go on trips to bring fresh water to people all over the world, and also have a vision clinic I support. So I'm doing things more deliberately. But then I thought, well, isn't that good to know that you actually did something you didn't even know it would end up like that? It's kind of very gratifying. On the other hand, the young woman did everything on her own, but maybe, just maybe, I showed her that this can be done. So that's
that's a beautiful story.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, because this young woman, they lived in poverty in Southern Maryland, and there was just, I think I was the most of the interest in her, just listening to her and kind of helping her to see that you can have a goal and it can be achieved, but it does take a lot of work. And so she did the work, and I'm still very proud of her.
I imagine. I always tend to think about those teachings. I'm Catholic, so I read the Bible. But when there's a parable where you throw the seed on the ground, no, and it relates to work many times. So when I'm desperate with work, I always think about that. They say the fact that you don't see it growing every day doesn't mean it's not growing. And with paying forward, I see just the same way in your story. It's beautiful. I mean, you planted a seed 15 years ago and then didn't see it. And now you turn and it's a beautiful tree that gives you shade and gives you so much pleasure. And it's so powerful.
Absolutely.
So powerful.
But the interesting thing, and I still see her face in me, when she read my name, Van Goth, is not a regular name. And she kind of recognized me. And her whole face just lit up. That's the reward I'm getting.
And it's great. And I'm sure
when beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you become aware, you also, I'm sure you acknowledge what others have done for you. Keith, do you have anything that you acknowledge maybe way back when that someone did something that eventually changed or impacted the trajectory of your life?
Oh God. I mean, the number of people that have impacted mine. I think of a gentleman named Charlie Johnson, who was one of the best engineers I ever met, certainly the best engineering manager. And Charlie, just being Charlie, he was just a very mellow, laid back guy. And when I got thrown into a situation with a 8-figure construction project, and I think I was 24 at the time. I don't know. I was just a couple years removed from school and took over. My boss had left. And so I had 20 some odd people underneath me. It was a baptism of fire, basically. And Charlie just essentially put it in perspective for me and allowed me my nature of wanting to do everything right and getting uptight about trying to make sure everything right. Charlie just kind of talked me off the ledge, if you will. But I'm sitting here listening to Ilse's story, and I'm blown away because I've known Ilse now for over 20 years. I've never heard that story. And
Oh, you heard it first and back to basics.
Yeah. But I've seen her do this over and over, and our personal journeys have been so intertwined over the last 20 years. It's amazing. And as I'm listening to her story, it's funny because just thinking about her whole point was that she was creating a ripple without intending to create. She wasn't consciously throwing a stone into the pond, but she was creating a ripple. And Ilse and I have had extensive conversations about her mother and the ripples and some of these things. And those of you who have listened to her podcast probably know a little bit about that backstory. But here's what it brought to mind for me is, Letitia, you, the way you and I met was through a very similar thing. It was an unintended ripple. You had Kristen Stelzer on your podcast, and Kristen was a woman that I had met through LinkedIn. She happened to be an engineer like me, and there was a lot of similarities. She reached out to me. She was getting into the marketing and copywriting industry. She and I talked. I just talked to her, and I recognized the skill she had, and I said, you're already there, blah, blah, blah. And she mentioned it in that podcast, which blew me away. It's similar, the same way that Ilse just described. And I wasn't even aware that I was doing it. I was just doing something that it made total sense to me. And I just was recognizing, much as Ilse, I was recognizing the potential somebody already had that maybe they didn't see in themselves or didn't believe that they had. And then it kind of, as I'm listening to Ilse's story, that was how you and I were introduced, Letitia. And then I said, you and I, we've had a few conversations, obviously, as you mentioned, feel like we're kind of friends now. And I know from what you've told me that you started this podcast with certain concepts in mind, but you also didn't have an idea that you were doing the same thing as far as unconsciously paying forward some of the lessons that you've learned throughout your life and, from your parents or other people that were important to you. And I would love to hear a situation where you had an example like that, a story about somebody who impacted your life.
Sure. No, it's great. And we say that the first reaction is say, oh my God, so many, right? So besides obviously trying to live like with love and kindness as an example, and my kids, they're 10 and 6. And the other day we helped this young guy that was left, his car was stranded without battery. And we were going to have dinner, and it's just like, can I stop for 10 minutes and help someone? He didn't even ask me for help. I offer. And just that is one thing, like leading by example and what putting in the world, just goodness. But I often think about, especially now that I get asked this favor often for friends. When I was a young woman, I was graduating university, and I wanted to do an internship that was meaningful, that was good. I wanted to have a great head start. And so, of course, who do you ask for help? Your father or your family, right? Dad, I want an internship that it's good. And so he obviously reached out to all of his friends and people he knew. And among those, he reached out to Edgar Fernandez. And here in Miami, I was in Venezuela at the time, and he used to work for Merrill Lynch. And sure enough, my dad asked, and as he asked many people asked me, can you help my daughter? She just graduated. How many times we get that question, like, how can we help? And I find that sometimes people don't go the extra mile to really find the help. But you know what? Edgar did. And he got me an unpaid internship at Merrill Lynch, Miami. So I came from Venezuela to Miami to do my undergraduate internship before my last year of school. And that was something that changed my entire career. I'm probably leaving Miami because of that internship, because I came back to Venezuela and they hired me in Merrill Lynch, Caracas, because, thank God I did a good job here in Miami. And then it was Edgar who said, now you're going to do your MBA and, do it right away. So, it's again, like planting those words of wisdom as a paid forward, kind of what Ilse described, planting that seed. And I am forever thankful for him because that really changed where I'm at. But also when just in the past 2 days, I've been asked by 2 different people, could you help my daughter find a job? Because the situation is really difficult. And I went back to that memory. I say, if he hadn't gone the extra mile out of his busy day to really look, then my life would be different. And so that's what inspires me to really dig into how can I help these young women find something that's worthy and that can change their career. So,
and I'll bet that he wasn't thinking about what was in it for him when he was doing it, because he just wanted to do it and so now you are mirroring what was provided to you. And this is the analogy that I used when Ilse and I started talking about this. This is going back a couple decades now. Is you throw a stone into the pond and you create a little ripple and you have no idea where that ripple's going to go. But as an engineer, in my mind, you create this ripple and assuming, no friction and obviously all the rest of it, it goes on forever until it hits a shore. And so here's Edgar. He created a ripple and then it's coming through you and you're a little island in the pond and it's continuing on. You're maybe redirecting it to these other women, and then probably 20 or 30 years down the road, they'll have it redirected and so here's Edgar impacting some women in Miami that he not only didn't know, but he had no idea. Heck, they probably weren't even born at the time, some of them. So
absolutely.
That's the power of paying it forward. It's just amazing that you create an impact with people that you've never met. As a saying goes, you've never met this side of heaven, right?
Yeah, and I'll go one step further, is that the ripple, it's even wider, because I can assure you, and Edgar would say this, he actually got me married. He was the judge of peace, or how do you say peace of judge? When I got married civil, I told him, you're going to marry us. So he actually also did that. But, my father is such a charismatic person. So when he met my father, he also was, taken away by the quality of a human being that my dad was, or my dad is, rather. He's still here, thank God. And so, I'm sure that had something to do with it. I'm sure that a lot of people asked him favors, but then someone that was nice in nature and good inspired that in him. And then it's like a ripple. You do something because something inspired you that you cannot even touch.
I'd like to maybe add something to it, because, and I've written this down because I didn't want to mess it up. Really. So my daughter, she's also an engineer, and she had worked as the chief of operations for the architect of the Capitol. She doesn't work there anymore because she took on the big position in the private industry. And while she was working at the Capitol, she was interviewed. And here, it just takes 1.5 minutes just to
go ahead. That's why we're
respond.
Here. Great.
So the question was to her, we read that working for the architect of the Capitol is a lifelong dream come true for you. What lit that spark of passion to serve, preserve, and inspire our national monuments? And this was her answer. Well, it kind of blew me away, because my daughter and I, we love each other, but as sometimes mothers and daughters are, I had to read it through the newspaper. My mother is my biggest role model. She's an immigrant who moved to the United States, supported 3 children, working 3 jobs while also earning a college degree at night. Her journey, in my view, is the American dream. Inspiring others through service by preserving our national monuments is my way of giving back for all that this nation has given my family. I still get choked up about this.
Oh, but it's so beautiful. I love that you're sharing that with us.
Yeah. so the ripple, it continues, because the ripple will continue with her daughter and her daughters with her family eventually. So this is something that it really really made me very proud of her.
Let me jump in, Ilse, because I'll extend that even further, because this goes to the conversations we've had. So Ilse learned that what Ilse was modeling in her behavior, which she wasn't even conscious of, was part of what the gift that her mom and her dad,
exactly,
because I know some of the things that her mom and dad had given to her. And now your daughter, Chrissy, so Chrissy had hundreds of people that were working under her and reporting to her.
Exactly.
And she was modeling that and passing that on. And those people, where did it go? I mean, it's almost a geometric progression how it expands.
Right. Yes, I tend to agree with this. Yes, the modeling, to be consistent in your the way you raise your children and the expectation of the children, but also put an expectation on yourself. You have to be a role model in order to the children believe in you, what they're asking them to do. So I do think that it's quite interesting that you don't even know through all the years you raise your children, how does it all end up? But I think it all ended up in a good way. I'm very, very pleased with that, and also very happy with this.
Yeah, no, and it's so powerful. I see as a parent that is definitely big responsibility when you know what's happening. But also, I want to go back a bit, because I think it's important, is that I feel that, as we were saying, sometimes we just do it. It's the nature. It's maybe what we've seen others do by example. So that's why we do it, which is natural. Right. Although, Ilse, I know your story. I mean, in Germany, if you haven't heard that episode, I mean, she really lived, from the other side that normally we don't hear, what the German kids were going through, when during Second World War. So it's probably you didn't see a lot of that, or whatever you saw like really impacted you. But yes. I feel that now, even by having this conversation, we are intentionally, as we say, manifesting good. And we've heard this many times. It's like one thing is being good because you're good, and it's almost like you're on automatic pilot and it's happening and it's fine. But when you put like intention into it, like saying, I'm not going to get anything out of this, but I'm going to do it. That I think it's compounding energy that we're creating. And, I don't know if you're familiar with Sounds True, but I had the honor to interview Tammy Simon, founder of Sound True, Back to Basics. And her tagline is, awakening the world. With the information they put out, with the things they put out. And so I think that now we are almost like, just by talking about it, we are awakening others to the fact that, you're good, and doing a good deed can have a compounding effect if you're intentional about it. What do you think about that, Keith?
I totally agree with you. And so it's interesting, because one of the first deep conversations that Ilse and I had was over an appetizer and drinks at a Mexican restaurant in Boston. Yeah. And we were talking, and Ilse gave me a book, and then we were chit-chatting about it. And it was a book by Ayn Rand called The Virtue of Selfishness. And it was and it wasn't in a negative sense. It was more in a self-interested sense, is what I would call it. But here's kind of why this just flashed through my head when you asked me that, Letitia, is that if we want to talk about being intentional with good energy, okay, and obviously you've got to go through the intentional phase, and in my observation, go through the intentional phase to get to the unconscious phase, where it just becomes part of who you are. It's totally selfish to spread good energy, because it all comes back to you. And I, like you, I'm Catholic, and the whole from a Christian theological perspective, one of the sayings is you can't outgive God, right? So so if you're sending that good energy out selfishly, you should be doing it in your own selfish interest, because it's going to come back to you, and it'll come back to you in ways that you can't even comprehend. And Ilse and I were working down on the sailboat here last month, and we had this interesting situation where I had found a gentleman's cell phone. It was early in the morning on a Saturday, and had no idea whether it was in the restroom. He left it in the restroom, and wasn't sure whether it had been left the night before by somebody who had been, partying or whatever, or somebody who was getting ready to go working in the morning. And it was locked. It had a screen lock, so I had no way of getting into it. And so Ilse and I are working, and I kept trying the text alerts are coming up, and I, so obviously it's interrupting us as we're working, and I'm just frantically trying to figure out who it is. And Ilse says, well, why are you worried about it? I said, well, he's probably worried about his phone. Well, then Ilse went and grabbed the phone, and she accidentally triggered Siri. And so long story short, we used Siri to call one of the people and start calling the text numbers or the names that I had. And we were able to track down who this guy was, not him, but who he was. And then we were able to get it to him. Turns out he was a young gentleman who was a captain of a fishing boat, and his entire business was on the phone. So how he was charging his customers, well, he got it back. He realized he was missing his phone. They were out on a fishing charter. He's out on the ocean. He went to get the rest of his, the customers finished their payments and everything, because they put down payments on and they didn't have it. So he was going to lose half of his money, or, figure out how to find a way. And he got it back. And the guy's name is Sam, I think. I don't know. I wrote it down somewhere. I don't remember. Mm-hmm. But the point is I don't know where that's coming back, but putting that energy out there, and I know my experience has shown me that it's to use a baseball analogy. If you're sending the energy to right field down on the first base line, when it comes back to you, it may come back from the third base line. It'll come back from, it'll seem like it's out of left field, but it's all interconnected in the workings of the universe.
Yeah, I do think for myself, I don't ever expect anything to come back. But when I do something that's under paying forward, afterwards, I just feel like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders. I just felt that needed to be done. But and I go on with my life. But there is some kind of reaction in my body, in my mind, that, yes, that was the right thing to do. If the other person accepts it or not, I have no control over it. But there is some kind of calmness in me, and I can move forward. But something seems to bother me when I see something happening around me, or maybe I can have an impact. And if I don't go forward, I feel very uptight for a long time. And then eventually, if I have another chance, I go forward with this. But whenever I do something which, it just puts a smile on my face. And I think that's the reward for stepping outside, your own environment, and having faith that it might help the other person or persons. Because as Keith said, paying forward is just as much for the person and to grow as the person who's giving. So to me, it's it makes me just feel good, very relaxed and very calm, and that I did something I was meant to do.
I think that's key, what you just said, that you know what feels good within yourself, and that's why you do it. Because I think, and I was going to ask this question, so this is perfect. I think that we're also faced, especially now, right? We're not going to go into politics, but we know the U.S., it's a divided country, and we are experiencing so many feelings that, and even at work, because it has been the case for me where I've done many good deeds for many people, and then I've been there when they have the chance to do something good for me and they haven't. So that's a hard one to deal with, because then I don't know about you, but I get into conflict, right? I'm like, oh my God. I'm pissed. and I never did it on the first place for getting something, but then to know that these people that basically owe you goodness don't do the same when they had the perfect opportunity is something that I've struggled with, because then I take it personal.
And Letitia, that's an example of how we're wired to keep score, even when we weren't keeping your intent. And I think the power comes when we can consciously overcome that subconscious scorekeeping.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I agree. Go ahead, Ilse.
Yes, that reminds me, and I've chatted with Keith. I did pro bono work for a church here, and it took a lot of time for me to put this training session together and so on. And thinking about Christian people and church and so on, you would think once I presented it, you would think you would get a thank you. And it really bothered me. They just took it because it's actually, I know how much work goes into developing a presentation, a kind of interesting presentation. And I had to consider a lot of different angles specific to this audience. But I told Keith, not even a thank you. And then I thought, I'm finally calming down on that. I said, Ilse, you did it because you wanted to do this. You didn't have to do this. You told them I'd be able to help you. And just because it's a certain community where you automatically expect to be, wow, thank you, bless the Lord, and all those kind of things. I didn't get anything of it. So I had to get over it. And I did. I'm glad I did it.
Do you remember the rest of the conversation, Ilse?
What was the rest?
So the rest of the conversation, what I said is, because we're talking, in a Christian theology and Christian situation, is that God sees that. And there's a note of it, and it's going to come back some other way. And this is the frustrating thing. It's also like, whether we're dealing with kids or family, we expect that, hey, look, I helped you out and did this. And again, that's part of the keeping score. I actually want to follow up with Letitia. So how did you reconcile that, Letitia? Because it's totally normal to be just so frustrated and pissed and say, "Oh my God, why? So what did you do?"
Well, I did a lot of introspection, and I focus on the feeling that Ilse described, which is at the end of the day, I did not do it looking for personal gain. No. And at the end of the day, now, Keith, what you said, God knows what I've done, and that knows where it comes from. It comes from a genuine place. And then I've learned, of course, through experience, I got upset many times before getting to this reflection, is to, in the practice of mindfulness, which I've embraced lately, just being aware of why is this feeling bothering me? Why is it? Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's ego, right? It's like, okay, my ego is hurt because I could have gotten that deal. It's more about the deal than about not paying it forward. I wanted to close the deal. But I realized that at the end of the day, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if you focus on immediate gratification, you're going to get disappointed time over and over and over. But if you see it as the bigger picture, like now, for instance, I've been getting a lot of good things out of nowhere. And so now I realize too, okay, all these good things out of nowhere might come from one of those times they screw me up.
It's coming from a place where you put that energy out into the universe, and you were, whether it was intentional or unconscious, it's now, as you say, and this is kind of that baseball analogy, you were sitting here focused on, my God, I get this energy. I gave this energy on the first baseline, and this person who's sitting on first base blew me off when they had the chance. And now all of a sudden, this flood of stuff is coming back from the other side of the stadium. And we think they're disconnected, but so there's a gentleman named Robert Ringer, and he talks about this, and he talks about it from a scientific standpoint. All atoms in the universe are connected. So if we're putting out good energy, the vibration, that good vibration goes through all these atoms. It's all interconnected. And what seems to be coming back from left field is actually not, it's the ripple that we actually created coming back and hitting us.
Right, exactly. That's with this project, because it took me pretty much all summer. And then I'm good, because like I said, I offered it, I did it, and I didn't really expect anything in the end, but nevertheless. But then I thought, well, be practical with this one. It's going to be on your list of the volunteer work you have been doing. So it's going to be added to my list, in case somebody needs a list of my volunteer work or some kind of skills and so on. But nevertheless, it's a learning process, and we all have emotions. But on the other hand, I always go back. I offered it, and I'm good with this now. I'm really good with this, because the people are getting something. They need it, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think that's so right. And I think it has a lot to do also with who you are, because at the end of the day, people will know who you are. If you're consistent in your actions and in being that kind of person that pays it forward, and I think by now we're not that young, and I think we've established, like, now people know who we are, right? And those people that have been inconsistent, I believe, because of a short-term gain, because of just going after something and then forgetting the ethics and who they are and the values. I think I did a video for my new webpage recently, and I found the words like, I don't want to compromise my essence.
Yeah.
For nothing. And so once I live true to that, then all the decisions are very easy, and paying it forward really becomes an easier exercise.
Absolutely. Because with Keith, we talked about it too. I always, long time, when you're young, you want to kind of not change, but be with a group, and you become a little bit different than who you really are. But as you grow older and have a lot of experiences, you want to stay yourself. Ilse will always be Ilse, whoever she is. I know who I am, and it will not change. I will listen and take in good suggestions and good information and good guidance, but my moral compass will not change. It will just not change. So, yes.
Well, and the cool thing is, what you just described, Ilse, is that as you get older, that's a natural. It seems to be a natural progression from what I've observed. But anybody at any time in their life can make that conscious decision to say, "Hey, look, I've been inconsistent," or I recognize this. If they take the time, as Letitia said, to be introspective and to look at themselves, and they can make that change. And whether you make that change out of altruism, hey, look, I want to be a better person, or whether you make it from the quote unquote selfish perspective of, this is in my personal best interest to do this. It's kind of like it's kind of like going to the gym, right? So whether you make the decision consciously and say, I'm going to do this for the right reason, or whether what your reason is, once you develop that habit, all of a sudden good things come from exercising regularly. It's the same thing. We're just exercising a good energy muscle, if you will, rather than our arms or our legs.
I think that's a good analogy, Keith. You're good.
Well, yeah, that's why you're both here. You're amazing. It's amazing conversation, and I think to Keith's point, it's when it becomes nature to you.
Yes,
it's easier, because it's undeniable that we all gonna face great challenges, and as Ilse did in your younger years and then through the life, but that didn't define you. And so when you allow your experiences, to just be, and you live through them, but you just don't compromise, those things that you can do for others, then you have the tools to really navigate through what life brings you.
You're absolutely correct, Leticia. My past, it's there, but it doesn't define me because I move on. Is it with me all the time? Yes. But as everyday living, I have to adjust to each little turn we take. But in essence, I do stay true to myself. I acknowledge what goes on in my world, but I will not make a change because things around me change all the time. That would drive me nuts because I'm centered in my own being. And it just makes me much calmer person. I'm usually a pretty energetic person, but it makes me much calmer, and I much more love myself for it. And for that reason, I can give love to other people, like my grandchildren or my children or my friends, much more easily. And I think that's a kind of paying forward too. If you're good to yourself, if you love yourself, then that will have ripples in the ocean that goes all the way around you to everybody who you come in contact with.
Oh, that's such a great, almost closing thought. I mean, I love it. What about you, Keith? You want to share, any closing thoughts, anything that we should have discussed that we didn't?
Well, I think Ilse's thought was an incredible closing thought. I mean, it's with the self-love being,
right.
It gets, depending upon the perspective, it can, it could be negative or positive. Obviously, self-love and the selfish on the center of the universe, like every baby is the center of the universe. They believe the world revolves around them because every adult does do exactly what they want. So, but that hopefully over time, we grow and we realize that, it's all interconnected, and we gain value when we focus on the giving and the paying it forward. And by doing that, as I said earlier, you can't outgive God or you can't outgive the universe, depending on your theological perspective. And it all comes back. There's an excellent book about this, and it's if you get a chance, I'm trying to remember the author is Bob. I can't remember. Bob Burg might be his name, but the book is called The Go Giver, and it's a phenomenal framework. Whether you're just want to read it as an individual or whether you want to construct your business around this concept. I know people who have done that, and it's transformed their business.
Oh, that's, I definitely will put it on the show notes. And, I'll use what you just said to have a short closing thought, which is around, doing it, for your business. The beauty about everything we have been talking about is that I don't see things separate. Like, I find that a lot of people think, okay, this is what I'm going to do in my business. This is what I'm going to do in my personal life. And they write business plans, and then sometimes we don't realize that these things that for many people think like a waste of time, like doing, even courses or seminars or getting in cohorts where you discuss this. Just by discussing this, you are also building your business. It's not separate, because then you will embed these concepts in how you're running your business and the business culture, and it will have ripple effects there too.
Yeah, Leticia, I have to say, and I always thank Keith, because we both connect on so many different levels, intellectual level, business levels, and so on. And he's always there to listen. That's a very good part of Keith. Many other good parts are of him too. But we have this relationship for so many years because we are honest with each other in business and also in our relationship to other people and our families. And it seems like even though we disagree once in a while, which is a good thing, but we always come back to the basics, that we have the similar goals in mind and we have to work it together. And for that, I'm very appreciative.
And I can tell as an outsider that you have the one of deepest respects that I've witnessed between two people. I mean, the two of you just have a very, very special bond that is great to see. It's very inspiring to see as well.
Well, thank you.
That's formed over years of battle, and as my running joke is, we're like Butch Cassidy and a Sundance Kid. We're going to have our back against each other and go down swinging together.
I like that. It's a good image to close. Maybe I should rework it somehow in the art for this episode.
I guess the image, just visualizing it.
Yeah, I think the two of you would look
good. It's all good.
It's all good. Well, I really thank you for this chat. I've enjoyed it tremendously. A lot of amazing concepts and wisdom that you both shared. And I think I really look forward, to do this another time and just picking up something that resonates and that we can put out, because I really admire and value your opinions and your take in life. So personally, for me, it's a treat to be able to have these conversations with the two of you and share with my audience. So thank you so much.
And thank you for inviting
my pleasure.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us in this new episode. And until the next time.